Hello again, everybody. I know a lot of you have probably seen or heard these commercials from financial firms or maybe a financial advisor or team that says, come into our office and we'll give you a second opinion on your portfolio. Right? They're everywhere. Should you? Should you get a second opinion? I'll answer that in just a second, but stay with me because in today's episode, we are going to look at the difference between opinions from financial advisors and facts. You better know the difference between the two because one is just an opinion. The fact part, you get that wrong, and that is a life changer. Maybe in a good way, unfortunately, maybe in a very, very unfortunate and bad way that could set you back years. So let's do this together, all right? So let's start with the question first. Should you get a second opinion? Sure, I have no problem with that. A third opinion. We do it all the time in other service industries, right? I have no problem with that. But here's what I would tell you. It's just an opinion. So the person you're working with now knows your life story. They know what makes you tick. They know your risk tolerance. They know what you're trying to achieve. They should know your family. They know all that stuff, right? They've picked a portfolio allocation that they think is right for you. It's their opinion based on their professional experience. You take that, you take statements of your accounts, you take that in your life story, and you go to another financial team, financial firm, and you get a second opinion. Again, it's their opinion as they learn something about you. What do you think the odds are that whatever they would select as a portfolio allocation, hypothetically, if you hire them, what do you think the odds are that what they select is exactly what you have now? Zero, pretty much. Now, is one better than the other? Maybe. Maybe not. It's just an opinion. If both of them eventually get you to your goals and they do it with staying within your risk tolerance, then both opinions are good. They both work. So let's be very careful in what we look at between opinions and facts. The facts are the unassailable realities of financial planning. There really is an opinion because there are some things that should be set in stone where you say, don't do that. That could come back to haunt you, like a podcast that I just did on trying to time the market. Go back and take a look at that one because that's a good refresher for this one too, to say that is a fact. Do not try to time the market. More money has been lost doing that than just staying fully invested. What I tell investors is you have to focus on the bigger life issues, not what this advisor's best ETF or stock idea is versus that advisor's opinion on what the best stock is to buy. I'm not saying that that's not important, but it's not the most essential, okay? If you're doing that, it's like you're picking pennies up off the sidewalk while $100 bills are floating overhead here. What are these $100 bills? Oh, I don't know. An issue like how much money should you be taking out in retirement on a percentage basis? You get that wrong and you can find yourself going back to work. So how much money should you take out on a percentage basis? Should it be what the market generally gives us long-term, 8 to 10%? Is that a reasonable distribution rate? Or should it be something smaller, even inflation or less? Should you only take out 2 or 3%, somewhere in between? Well, I'm going to give you my answer right now, and then we're going to backfill the details. In my professional opinion, and this part is an opinion, but I'm going to try to make it into more of a fact here in a second, 4%, a 4% distribution rate. Now, how can I make it factual? I don't know. Let's look at real life data right here. So this is, you're going to be the line in purple, all right? You're the top. And we're starting in 2006. Unfortunately, you didn't know as you retired that the great financial crisis is on your doorstep. So look at this. As you're drawing out 4%, you started with $1 million, by the way. You had a nice little 401k rollover. You survived it, the Great Recession. You can see the market crashing there. But because you were taking out $40,000 out of that million, 4%, you were able to survive it and go right back up. However, your colleague who retired at the same time with you, the exact same amount, $1 million, was pulling out 8%. That's the advice. That's the opinion he was given. And he ran out of money in early 2020. You should know, folks, that the chart you just saw right there is not fully invested in the stock market. Neither one of those people were even taking a lot of risk. That was a 50% balance of stocks and 50% bonds. And yet the guy who was taking out 8%, he ran out of money. Now, in reality, he probably would have done something before that. Maybe he would have stopped taking out the 80,000, I hope, or he would have gone back to work and stopped taking money out altogether. But that just shows you that you get a big life issue wrong like that. It pains me to know, and some of you are going to know exactly who I'm talking about. There is a well-known financial guy out there on the airwaves, also does podcasts, so written books, who is telling people that it's okay to draw out 10 to 12% in retirement because that's the long-term average of the stock market. And he stands by it. I keep waiting for him to pull that back and say, yeah, maybe not so much. He won't do it. And the reason he comes up with that number is that's the long-term 100-year average of the stock market, so you can do that. If you manage money and your license actually means something and you have any kind of credibility and you are trying to do well for your clients, you would never recommend that kind of a distribution at all. So what about something like 5%? If 8% may not work, if you go into a really bad bear market, would 5% work? Well, let's go back to the chart and take a look. There's you again. You're the purple line. Nothing has changed with you. And now we've got the 5% guy. And you could say, all right, it worked. At the end of 2024, you don't have that million as much, but you've got over 960,000. Okay, while you were pulling out 50,000 a year. Again, those early days were a little stressful, as you can see the big crash from the Great Recession. You made it back up. Then you can see 2022, the bear market there recently, and now you're starting to slowly go back up. So 5% is okay, but let me come at this at a different way. Why do I even come up with 4%? Why is that important? Well, historically, we just plugged 4% in the worst bear market in history. That's what it was outside of the Great Depression. And you've made money. The million turned into $1.5 million, as you saw in that chart. So we've got history on our side. But in today's environment and in most environments, you can build a portfolio of stocks and bonds and keep it blue chip, good safe bonds, and really get about a 4% dividend yield. You can do that. So the key here is if you're not touching principal during the inevitable bear markets and corrections, I know it's a punch in the gut. Nobody wants to lose money, but your retirement plan is going to be unassailable. It's going to be impenetrable. You can't mess it up if you're not pulling out principal. You get to 5% draw. You can do a 5% yielding portfolio, but you're really not getting a lot of growth anymore. You're having to do more like utility stocks, things like that, maybe some higher yielding bonds that take on a little bit more risk. I'm not against that at all, but it's not the perfected portfolio that I typically recommend to people. So I would add this. So 4% in today's world, I told you could develop a portfolio to get a 4% dividend yield. But if you do want a little bit more growth and you say, well, Dave, I've put together a portfolio that's 3% dividends and interest. I need just 1% growth. I'm okay with that because I use a 75% rule that I came up with. Whatever income that you draw out, if at least 75% of that is dividends and interest, that's really, really good. So if you draw at 4%, and 3% is coming from free cash flow. And by the way, even in bear markets, stocks raise their dividends, good quality blue chip stocks. You'll have to keep an eye on it. You want to be careful that you don't own some companies where stocks might be cut, but that's on the rare side. Most companies still raise their dividends. So if you're drawing out 4% and 3% is dividends, that's 75% of your income is dividends. If you need 5% of a draw out in retirement, I'm okay with that. But try to develop your portfolio to a place where you're drawing out or you're getting 4% in dividends. Now you're 80% covered by dividends. And by the way, look, I talked about second opinions at the beginning. If any of you are just wanting me to answer any questions that you have about withdrawal rates or give you my unsolicited advice, I mean, you're the one who could email me, please, by all means do. We could have a private conversation offline. And you can do it by just this email. It's a very easy one to remember. It's Dave, that'd be me, at 1PWM, and that is One Private Wealth Management, of course. You could also check out the website, which you are seeing here below also. So it gets to this. Remember again to stick with the big issues, the life-changing issues. When should I take Social Security? Oh yeah, I did a recent podcast on that. Should I take long-term care, or should I have long-term care? What about other insurance? What about estate planning, succession planning, tax issues? Those are the big issues, the ones that are more factual than opinion. Don't worry so much about trying to find the best stocks. Yes, that can have some relation to performance, but that's not what is going to get you to your goals. If your goals are reasonable, you don't have to always have the best performing ETFs and stocks. You just have to get the bigger issues, the $100 bills floating over your head. Those are the things that you have to notice. I hope that helps, folks. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Please hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you again next time.